Okay, so welcome everybody to this week's The Friday Club Break Time with interview. I'm delighted today to be joined by Phil Mathe of Brighton College in the UAE. Phil, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
We're absolutely thrilled that you're joining us. Can you start us off, Phil, by telling us a little bit about your role at Brighton College, please?
Yeah, sure. So Brighton College is a British international school in the UAE. There are actually 3 Brighton colleges in the UAE. We're in Abu Dhabi, and then there are also schools in Dubai as well. And we all have very similar structures, and they're quite traditional in the roles that exist within the schools, quite similar to British international schools or British schools in the UK. So my role is Director of Sport. That's really what you would expect a Director of Sport role to be in any independent school anywhere in the world. So it's twofold. It's partly obviously running physical education and running that side of academic programs, but also very much looking at the extracurricular provision, both sport and recreation-based extracurricular activities, competitive sport, tournaments, trips, all those kind of things, and very much feeding into the PR and marketing side of the school, which I know is what we're going to talk a little bit about today.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I think certainly for me, who's never been involved with the sports side, to hear you talking about, working with marketing to promote sports in your school sounds really interesting. And it sounds like that's become a selling point for you.
No, absolutely. And it's not something that's particularly new. I think independent schools in the UK have been using their sports programs as marketing tools for many, many years. And obviously with the competitive nature of sport in the UK, to be able to say that you have good, well-organised competitive sports programs is something that really is in the forefront of parents' minds when they're making choices about where to send their children. And that's no different internationally. We obviously work in very competitive marketplaces. There are probably into the thousands of international schools just in the United Arab Emirates, and we're all fighting over the same small group of expat and local children. And so anything that we can do to promote the uniqueness and the individual nature of our schools is going to help with those conversations for our admissions departments. And sport is very highly organized in the UAE. The patches of it are very highly competitive, and so being able to engage in that at an appropriate level for your demographic of pupils is a real key selling point.
That's brilliant. And what's the competitive edge that Brighton College in the UAE has from a sports perspective?
Well, we're very lucky that we obviously have a really significant parent school in the UK, and Brighton College in the UK is it's the school of the decade. It was awarded School of the Decade status last year. It's very well established. It's very highly regarded, and it has very clearly defined sports and recreational activity programs that we can feed off, we can model ours on. It can be traditional when it needs to be, but obviously we have the ability to take the basic programs and adapt them to suit our particular needs. Being a family of schools mean obviously we have great access to resources and opportunities that individual standalone schools don't necessarily have. But we are all very different as schools, and we have very different pupil cohorts. We have very different types of pupils from different parts of the world. My particular school has much more of an Emirati flavour to it, because we live we work in an environment where there are lots more Emirati pupils than perhaps the other 2 schools. So we have to adapt what Brighton College does to suit our particular needs, and that makes it very unique, and we believe makes it quite a unique selling point for us as a school.
It really sounds it. For some of our listeners, their day job will be marketing and admissions. Can you give a flavour of some of the marketing activities that you might get involved in day to day as a director of sports? Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So we have a marketing department, very, very hard-working marketing coordinator, and her role is very much to get the Brighton College story out into the community in as many different ways as possible, and then have those conversations with not just prospective pupils, but companies who are based in Abu Dhabi, companies who are looking to relocate staff, and really making sure that when they're making choices about which school to send their children to, that we are absolutely the best option. And my role is very much to provide our marketing department with the ammunition, so to speak, that they need to be able to have those conversations. So when a prospective parent might mention a particular sport that their child has been doing in their previous school, wherever in the world that might be, I need to be able to be sure that my marketing department can say, well, actually, we can offer this, we do this. Or the alternative to that is be very clear on what we can't offer, because that's, as much as we want to sell our school, it has to also be right for the pupils coming in. And if there are things that we simply can't offer or we don't currently offer, we need to be upfront and clear about that, so that our marketing department don't find themselves having to say things that they can't be 100% sure are accurate, because you'll always get found out in the end.
Yeah, and I guess, we hear a lot from our guest speakers that they want their prospective families to have a great first experience of the school. So talking about the things you do well, I guess, is really, really key. What sports
absolutely.
are your favourite to get involved in, out of interest, Phil?
Personally, I used to play rugby when I was a lot younger, and then my knees gave up on me. So now I engage with. There is a very large kind of triathlon, running, adventure sports type community in the UAE, and most of our staff and most of our pupil families are engaged in some way in that, whether it be triathlon. Triathlon is huge here. Distance running, there are 5Ks every weekend run by Abu Dhabi Sports Council. So I do those kind of things, just generally keep fit, still play a bit of touch rugby every now and again. And I'm a hacking golfer.
Great.
Desperately trying to improve. We have a fantastic, stunning golf course just down the road from the school. So most of the staff at some point during their time with us engage with that. And we have pupils who will go straight from school to the golf course and spend their evenings at the golf course, and then competing nationally and internationally. So that's quite a nice thing to do. But yeah, just general, and I think it's the same for a lot of international schools. Is that sort of fitness, recreational fitness community is really important. And it is, again, coming back to the marketing thing, it's a huge selling point. So we run the local triathlon club out of our school. So when people move into the area and they're looking for triathlon, they immediately see there's a link between what we do at the school and what the local triathlon clubs do. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a link with the wider community as well, not just the students that are already inside.
No, absolutely. And that's really important. I spend quite a lot of my time working with organizations, agencies, the sports clubs in Al Ain and in Abu Dhabi to try and build networks, all the things that already exist in the UK that perhaps are slightly less apparent in international setups at the moment. That's part of my role. And again, that's really important for us to be able to identify and market those links. We have the top UAE Premiership football club in our city, which is great. Wow. Al Ain FC, they've won all sorts of competitions, international competitions and things. And so one of the projects that we're working on at the moment is really tying up with them, because we have a lot of our pupils that come into the school are footballers, want to play football. It's huge in the UAE. And so having links to a recognized club with opportunities for pupils to progress is something that's really valuable. So those kind of things. And again, it's all comes back to the marketing of the school. It's all how do we sell the school to prospective parents?
Brilliant. And what role would a sporting event, I mean, you've mentioned triathlons there, and I imagine there are other tournaments, matches that you would have within the school itself. Do those events get promoted from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, very much so. So there are very specific expat publications in the UAE. So there are magazines that cater specifically to the communities. We'll quite often advertise our events in those. Obviously, anytime we invite another school to send their children to our school for an event, that's a marketing opportunity for a parent to come and see our facilities and our programs and say, well, actually that's 10% better than my current school. We are unashamedly the most expensive school in our city, and therefore we have to make sure that everything we do is in line with that. If we're the most expensive, we also have to be the best, and that needs to be shown to all the people that come to our school or engage with our school.
Perfect. So from your point of view, you sound so knowledgeable, Phil, and I think I'll speak for, on behalf of everybody who's watching this, that you're clearly very, very knowledgeable and you've got a lot of expertise there. How, and what sort of skills do you think are essential for directors of sport when getting involved in marketing or promoting these events?
I have been doing this for a long time. So I have experienced different ways of doing this and different levels of engagement with between marketing and sports within schools. And so I figured out what works, but it's all to do with your particular context. So my context that I find myself in at the moment is very different to my previous one, which was in Cairo in Egypt, which was actually a far more competitive environment. The school sports programs in Cairo are very, very well organized, very traditional, have been in place for a long time, are very much more Americanized in their approach. So it's big showpiece events. And so my role was different because it was very much about having to be successful. Whereas my role currently is very much more about sport for all. It's very much more about engagement and inclusion. And so you need to understand your school. You need to work very closely with your marketing department. You need to have a good working relationship with them. It's quite easy for people that are involved in organising sports and extracurricular activities to see marketing departments as almost like a barrier. But in fact, if you have a good working relationship with your marketing department, that can be incredibly useful and incredibly valuable. And I certainly have that here at the moment. It's understand your context, understand the pupils and the families that those children are coming from. Make sure that what you're offering meets those needs. There's no good offering an outstanding, cutting edge. I'm trying to think of a sport now. Hockey program. If you're the only school in the country playing hockey, and there's nobody to compete against, so you need to understand your particular environment, and you need to really dig deep into what it is that the people that potentially may send their children to your school really want, and then focus on those areas.
Brilliant. It sounds like it's a really good way to understand the community and then potentially where more students might be coming from, because the school is almost a mirror of what's popular in the local area, sport-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. I see my role as very much almost like a sales role. Before I became a teacher, I was a salesperson. I used to work in London in IT sales, and I approach my job very much like that. My job is a part of my job. Obviously, there are other things, but part of my job is to sell our vision, our mission, and our programs to anybody that potentially might benefit from them. And you have to take a very marketing focused approach to it, because at the end of the day, if I don't do those things well, it makes the admissions team have to work that much harder, and inevitably we won't get as many pupils as we would do otherwise. So
absolutely, that's really good to hear, Phil. Do you have any tips for team members on the other side, on the marketing side, that might want to start leveraging their sports departments in a bigger way?
Well, absolutely. Don't forget that your sports programs are really one of your most useful, most powerful tools. And if you're not engaged with your PE departments, with your directors of sport, with your head of PE, whoever it might be, then go and have a conversation. And the thing about PE teachers, especially when you get to sort of director of sport level, is we love talking about what we do. We're passionate about what we do, and we believe in the value of it. And so if anybody comes and talks to me about something to do with sport and physical education, I could spend an hour talking to them about it and never get tired of it. So go and have a conversation. Look at what your school offers. Don't just assume that your sports program looks like every other sports program, because chances are it doesn't. And there will be unique things about what your PE and sports departments are offering that you can really sell to a community, to sell to an audience, and use their expertise. Don't feel you have to do all the work yourself, because marketing people are experts in marketing. PE teachers are experts in PE and sport. So use those skill sets. Like I said, PE teachers love standing and talking in front of people. Get them out in front of people. We are very forward-facing, parent-facing people. I spend a huge amount of my time talking to parents, talking to prospective parents, talking to pupils. So use those skills. Don't feel that you have to just collect information and then somehow impart that to your audience. Use those PE teachers' skills, and don't ever be afraid to just go and view and watch and observe and take photos and ask questions about what's going on in PE and sport, because you will find out all sorts of things that will add value to your marketing message. The other thing I should say, actually, and this is really important, and actually in international schools is a growth area, definitely for marketing, is it's not just about sport anymore. So PE is evolving all the time. It's an ever-changing environment. And one of the things that's really key at the moment is the idea of inclusive provision for all pupils, not just the ones that are going to play in your first 15s or your first team football. And so schools are looking at, how do we sell a different type of physical education? It's very much more about being holistic in its approach. It's looking at well-being. Obviously, mental health is a huge thing at the moment globally for all schools, and things like leadership, communication, collaboration skills. Most PE departments are building these things into their PE programs, and those become really unique selling points that are nothing to do with, well, if your son is fantastic at hockey, he will play hockey for our school. This might be, well, actually, my child is not quite so sporty, in which case the message has to be slightly different. Well, we're going to engage them in all sorts of different areas of growth that perhaps are not quite so obviously linked to sport, but are equally as valuable. So in our particular environment, we've got a very holistic approach to our PE curriculum, and our marketing department have really picked up on that and are now starting to put across some of those messages when they talk to prospective clients, and say it's not just about competitive sport, it's about provision for all, and it's about providing the appropriate level for each individual student. And that's very powerful. That's very powerful. So that's
I love that. I love that so much, because I think, you learn so many skills on the field, on the tracks, that you can't learn in a classroom, and they go with you for the whole of your life that way. So sports, I think, is so important that way. Thank you for that, Phil. That's brilliant. Just before I let you go back to your day job then, what are you most looking forward to about the next academic year?
So we in the UAE have had two full years of complete disruption. It's the same for most people. And we feel quite lucky that we're moving forward possibly faster than some areas of the world, but it has been hugely disruptive. And from a PE and sport point of view, even more so, because restrictions on social distancing, restrictions on competitions has really limited us for 2 years. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into school in August and rebuilding some of those fantastic opportunities that we were providing 18 months ago. So I'm having conversations about overseas sports trips again. I'm having conversations about ski trips and tournaments in Dubai and Abu Dhabi that we just have not existed for 2 years. And what we really have to do, and what's really firing me at the moment, is the idea of letting the pupils catch up on all those opportunities that they missed. So if you were a year 9 pupil, you've missed year 7 and year 8. And so now your year 9 becomes even more important because we have so many opportunities we have to now provide to them. So it's going to be a real challenge. There are some areas that we're still really unsure about, and I don't think COVID is going anywhere in the short term. So we will all still have to be flexible, and we have to sell ourselves in a slightly different way. But I can see light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm really looking forward to being able to start to rebuild some of those great things that we were doing that all had to come to a stop suddenly.
Yeah. Perfect. I can't wait to see what you do, and I'll definitely be looking at your socials, your website, to see what comes out. And I hope you keep in touch with us, Phil, and let our listeners know what's gone on for you at Brighton College in the UAE.
No, absolutely. I will. I'll stay in touch. I'll give you an update at some point.
Perfect. Thank you. You've been an absolutely brilliant guest. I know this would be a really popular topic, so absolutely delighted that you've joined us today. Thank you so much.
No problem. And if anybody sees this and wants to talk more, I'm sure that you can pass on contact details. I'm quite happy to have conversations with anybody, whether they're PE people or marketing people, about what we do and potentially what they could do.